Okay, so when are we going to see the first 1 hour 59 marathon? And not in controlled situation like Austria, not under those regulations. Eliud Kipchoge had 30 paces. Everyone was doing a little bit of work. Everything was controlled. The conditions were perfect. It was a test of the human spirit, and that worked. But when are we actually going to see it in a race? So the world record has just been broken. More than 30 seconds has taken off Eliud Kipchoge's marathon. And more interestingly, the last 8 world records for the men's marathon have all been in Berlin. And now we've just seen a marathon world record in Chicago, which is a more difficult course and less strength and depth in the race and less incentive than the Berlin Marathon. So what's going on? Like, we're seeing a new runner kind of step up to the plate. There's lots of talk about massive volume in training, loads of kilometers, that the guy's running up to 300 kilometers and more per week, which is absolutely mind-blowing. But when are we actually going to see in a race somebody break that 2 hour mark and run 1:59? And then what's possible? So if you look back at the marathon, it's 110, 115 years ago, about 1908, that the first sub 3 hour marathon was run, which pretty simple to do. The amount of people that are running that in the last 20 years, in a typical year in London, a lot of people are running sub 3 marathons, and that was 110 years ago. You've got to think about the footwear, think about the conditions, think about what we knew about nutrition, etc., etc. It took 1935 was the first sub 2:30 marathon, and then it took 18 years to get to sub 2:20. So in 1953, which is 70 years ago, the first sub 2:20 marathon, which is pretty embarrassing for me because my personal best is 2 hour 21. And 70 years ago, with the shoes that they were wearing, in the conditions they were wearing, no scientific knowledge like they have now. Nutrition was nothing near as convenient and race ready as it is right now, and they were already able to run a sub 2:20 marathon in 1953, 70 years ago. And then the progression has been really steep, and what we've seen in the last 20, 25, 30 years, Belayneh was the main first athlete from that pocket of East African athletes where you've got Ethiopia, Eritrea, Uganda, and obviously Kenya. You've seen like an incentive for these guys to come out of those countries that are absolutely purposely built for running fast times over the marathon and shorter, and from everything from 1500 meters to marathon, they've dominated. We've seen the incentive for those guys to get out of the country and travel and compete and go to New York, Chicago, Canada, London, and just dominate the marathon. So in the last 10, 15 years, it's absolutely been dominated. But the first 2 hour 10 marathon, 2 hour 15 marathon, all run by either US, Australia, or UK. Ron Hill ran for the first 2 hour 10 marathon. And then more recently, what we've got is, Haile Gebrselassie dominated. This is 2008. He won in Berlin. He ran the first 2:04 marathon. And it's taken us a long time. So that's 15 years ago. It's taken us a long time to take time off to run the first under 2 hour 3 marathon. Dennis Kimetu was 2 hours. I remember it so well. It was 2014 September Berlin Marathon. Dennis Kimetu, 2 hours 2 minutes and 59 seconds, and he was wearing an Adidas Adios. Boston Adios or something like that. So it wasn't a super shoe yet. It was still 2014, but it was an insane feat. And the interesting thing about that is we never really saw anything from Dennis afterwards. After that, he went home, bought most of his village, apparently, all the houses in his village, and either gave them away to people or rented them. So became kind of a property mogul in his hometown, which is fantastic. But then from there, we've seen from 2014 that sub 2 hour 3 marathon. Then we've seen obviously Eliud Kipchoge take over. But then in 2017, all of a sudden we've got the super shoes. So we've got the super shoes, we've got the Vaporfly, we've got Vaporfly 4% that came out, the orange shoes that everybody remembers. And then all of a sudden, records went crazy. And I remember the Barcelona women's half marathon just being dominated by somebody who ran 65 or 66 minutes. And that was unheard of for that time. There's loads of allegations around it. But we saw that then we started to understand what the super shoe could do. And then more recently, after Eloyd has kind of taken charge, and of the 15 marathons that he's done, he's won 13 or 12 and set records in a lot of those. Then we've seen something from Adidas come that's very, very special. So what you've got, and when you kind of look at what makes a world record and what factors go into it, then you need the strength and depth of the athletes. And so from that pocket of East Africa, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, from Uganda, from Kenya, you've already got that strength and depth. You've got loads of runners that are competitive. They make the races more competitive. They're all competing for that top spot, or those top spots, those podium spots. They're all incentivized by money. They all want the prize money. They all want the appearance fees. They all want to run fast times so they can earn a bigger appearance fee and get a bigger win bonus, and ideally get that world record bonus. So you've got the incentives there, you've got the competition there, you've got the strength and depth. The incentives comes from the race. So Berlin is going to put up big money for anybody that breaks the world record there, and Eloyd Kipchoge has obviously done that. The agents are taking full advantage of that, and and are working really, really well in order to kind of get their athletes in the right place and get a return on their investment. So you've got that factor at play. And then what you've got is the companies. So obviously Nike and Adidas have been competing for that road shoe, that fastest road shoe, for a long time. And we've had the Zoom Streak from Nike. We've had the Boston, that special foam from the Boston foam. I think it is. I forgot exactly what the name is, but that allowed runners to run faster. And now you've got this super shoe era for the last 6 years, since 2017. Then we've got basically market share being gained by Nike and Adidas, and all the other companies are jumping on board and building something fast because they have to keep up. I just saw a study that it's 11-12% difference. It can be up to that kind of difference, and it doesn't matter what time you're running. That's the kind of gain that you can get from this type of shoe. Then if you think about your own time, if that's a 3-hour marathon and you can gain 10%, that's 18 minutes difference. You can run an 18-minute PB if obviously your training's got to go right, but that's the type of progress that you can get if you've got this kind of super shoe on. So all these factors, the competition, the strength and depth from the countries, throw it into that, the incentive of winning big races, big prize money and world records. Obviously the conditions have got to be right. It's got to be cold enough. It's got to be not slippy on race day. All these factors combined. So when is the world record actually going to fall below 2 hours? It's 2 hours and 35 seconds at the moment, which is less than 0.4%, less than 0.5% away from a sub 2 hour marathon. I'm going to say any race moving forward this autumn or next spring, I'm going to put my bet on and say that the world record is going to be 1:59 something by the time that we get to May next year, 2024. That's my bet. And I'm pretty sure that any race now, the right factors come together, and all those factors there, the incentive, the athletes are obviously fast enough. Somebody's going to break it, whether it's Eloyd Kipchoge or whether it's Kiptum or whether it's somebody else. It's going to go, and be ready for it. If you've got any value from this video, I've got to ask you this. Comment, smash that like, smash the subscribe, and get involved, and tell me what's your fastest time and how far away are you personally, whether you're running 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours for a marathon, how far are you from breaking the sub 2 hour record?